I just set out in front and yet another handout. The Philadelphia Row House Manuals. Anybody have this book already? Yeah, it's a great reference, practical guide for homeowners. If you own a row house, pick this up. It was actually written by the woman who used to teach this class, Kiki Bolander, in her architecture firm. So they're free up in front. Get that on your way out. Like. On your way out. Okay. All right now. All right, settle down. Okay, let's get serious. All right, so you all know why we changed the zoning code, right? You do? Fantastic. One of the big reasons the zoning code changed was for this next section, citizen involvement. In Philadelphia, there seems to be exceptional demand, more than most cities, for citizens to be involved in the zoning process and development process. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the zoning code changed to include greater citizen involvement for public and neighborhood notice, RCOs, which of course no one here has heard of, and civic design review, and then Judy's going to bring us up at the end with a case study of her experience with ZBA. So here are the goals that were articulated during that 5-year zoning code reform process, very lengthy, and engaged over 2,000 people across the city. And the one we're going to talk about is number 5, involving the public in development decisions. Notice meetings for registered community organizations. Okay, under the old code, some of you may be familiar with the old code and how some neighborhood groups met with developers and a lot didn't, because there was confusion about who was representing the neighborhood. And there were no standards for how to weigh that input. Now, some very organized communities like Center City had very strong resident organizations, and developers knew who they were, but that was not the case for most of the city. So the new zoning code addresses this by formalizing the role of community organizations in the development process, and it creates a standard for the 2 things you see there. Notice for community groups in addition to the usual public notice, and meetings between community groups and developers. And this is applicable only when a developer application requires a zoning variance or civic design review, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So here's a table in the zoning code that shows how the new neighborhood notice and meeting requirement kicks in. And again, this is important to note that this is in addition to the general public notice requirements, and all of you have probably seen those orange signs that shows there when something is going to be going up in the neighborhood. In this column that you see, I highlighted here, you see a Y for yes, for neighborhood notice and a meeting in those 3 cases I mentioned. Special exception, zoning variance, and civic design review. So in order to talk about this new process, we need to make sure everyone here understands who is involved in this. First, the developer or applicant, we talked about this last week, is anyone trying to improve an existing building or build something new on a piece of land. In that big 11 by 17 handout, I think I gave that to you in the first class, the building blocks of Philadelphia. I think that was the first class. You have a description of all the city agencies that can be involved in development approvals process. So for tonight, we're going to simplify. We're going to put all those reviewing agencies, Art Commission, Historical Commission, Streets, and Water Department in that orange box, so city regulating agencies. And we're going to look at 2 of the decision makers from that chart in the purple box, L&I and ZBA. And the red box, RCOs, that represents all of you. Those are the civic groups that might have an interest in a development project in your neighborhood. So first of all, what needs zoning approval? The most obvious thing is new construction of structures or new use is proposed on or in a property, additions to existing buildings, off-street parking, signs, and relocation of lot lines or subdivision, which doesn't happen that often. So the first decision maker, L&I. So everybody has heard of L&I, hopefully. Department of Licenses and Inspection. That is the front door to any development or construction project in the city. This agency issues permits and licenses for all activities. LNI enforces public safety and growth within the city of Philadelphia. And we know also in Philadelphia they're woefully understaffed because they can't enforce everything they should be. A developer would first file a zoning application with LNI to get a zoning permit, and then a building permit would follow later. The ZBA, Zoning Board of Adjustment, you heard people always refer to by these acronyms, but it stands for Zoning Board of Adjustment, which is actually an independent agency of LNI. These are 5 members that are appointed by the mayor. So with the current mayor, the staffing all changed. And they hold public hearings around the corner on this very floor, in that back corner. They hear appeals of zoning decisions made by LNI and have the authority to overturn LNI's decisions, which are based on compliance with the zoning regulations. Has anybody in this room gone before the ZBA? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. And then just a reminder, the zoning code is the law. The ZBA determines when an exception to the law can be made. The Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is not a decision maker, but in zoning cases, review and signature is often a prerequisite for many plans seeking permits through LNI, and again, they're usually larger projects. That means that LNI may refer an applicant to the Planning Commission staff before they will issue a permit. The Planning Commission also receives a list of all the appeals from the ZBA. A member of our staff sits in on the ZBA meetings and makes recommendations to the board. Sometimes they listen to us, sometimes they don't. And the Planning Commission also maintains the RCO registration process. Developers don't always know about every group that might have an interest in a project, so the Zoning Code Reform project created the concept of registered community organizations, or RCOs, and they did do research nationally on other cities that have sort of similar entities, and they came up with this model after much deliberation and input. So how many people here represent or are a member of an RCO? Wow, okay, this is probably more than most classes. An RCO map, and the list is on the city zoning map on the website. And again, organizations that are RCOs have opportunities for additional notice and engagement with the development proposed that are within their boundaries. And all of you probably already know this, but there are 3 main benefits of being an RCO. You get additional notice directly from the developer, whose boundaries include the area of the development, in addition to general public notice. You must meet with the developer where the input can be shared. And third, you have an opportunity to sit on the Civic Design Review Committee when projects are proposed in your boundaries, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. And the opposite side of benefits, of course, is responsibilities. So there are some pretty serious responsibilities that come with being an RCO because you're now part of a regulated process. You could potentially be sued. Just throw that in there. Most civic groups are volunteer-based, so you really need to consider carefully how your organization can comply with these responsibilities. And I just want to point out number 3 there, which many of you have heard of. If your neighborhood has more than one civic association, in some parts of the city there are multiple RCOs with overlapping boundaries, it's okay, but a coordinating RCO must be selected to coordinate that meeting with the developer. For all RCOs with the developer, and the council office for that district decides who that coordinating RCO is going to be. If there is no RCO in the area of the project, the district council office serves as the RCO. It's important to note that registration, part of registered community organization, only means your group is going to get early notification of those projects going before ZBA or Civic Design Review, and the developer needs to meet with you. It does not mean that you can dictate whatever you want or that the ZBA will follow your recommendations. The ZBA does need a letter from the RCO in order to know the developer has met with you, and that, again, is part of the regulated requirement, so it's part of the law. Okay, and qualifying criteria, this has changed. Council keeps playing with what these criteria are, but these are the current ones. And these are only in place to ensure that an RCO is more truly representative of the community and is not just a special interest group that came about to oppose a particular project. Community organizations, as you all know, can be involved in lots of different activities like cleanup campaigns, community gardens, and youth programs. But RCO designation is only for those organizations that are concerned with the physical development of their community so they can get early notification on ZBA cases. Okay. Civic design review. The other process where an RCO may get involved with feedback on a development proposal is the civic design review, or CDR. This is a new process in the zoning code. It convenes the developer, the community, and the public to review mostly large projects that will have a significant impact on their neighborhood and its relationship to the public realm. The process is mandatory, but the recommendations of this committee are advisory only. So the developer can choose to incorporate those recommendations or not. Generally, these are large projects, new and not renovation, over 100,000 square feet or more than 100 dwelling units. So they're generally more likely to be in Center City or University City area. So what aspects does Civic Design Review Committee look at? The committee can review and comment on the project's impact on public realm, and that's just a fancy word to refer to streets, sidewalks, parks, and open space around a project. So recommendations might ask that more glass or windows be at the street walls so pedestrians aren't walking along a blank wall, or reducing the number of curb cuts to parking or loading docks so it's safer for pedestrians walking along the street. And that committee meets in this room monthly, and there's usually 2 or 3 cases. There has been up to 5 or 6 cases, and it goes a long time. But that's open to the public, so if you are interested, it's the first Tuesday of every month. And who's on it? So the committee is composed of 7 members. There are 6 permanent members that are appointed by the mayor. And you can see the mix of professionals, developer, and then there's up to 2 seats that are filled by RCO representatives. So there could, if there's more than 1 RCO in that area, there could be up to 2 seats filled by a representative. And this slide just shows the timeline for that neighborhood notice and meeting. The developer gets the contact information for all those affected RCOs, whose boundaries include the proposed project, a list of affected properties, and I'm going to tell you what that means in the next slide. By day 17, the developer must have provided written notification to all the affected RCOs, the affected property occupants, district council office, and the ZBA. And then before day 45, a public neighborhood meeting must be held and documented by that coordinating RCO. The ZBA will only hear the case after that public meeting has been held with the RCOs, or if they receive documentation there was a good faith effort to hold the meeting and for some reason it couldn't happen. So I refer to affected properties in this slide. This is potentially going to change very soon. But for now, affected properties refers to within a 200-foot radius of the applicant's property on the same block face as the applicant's property or on the block face across the street. And that's the turquoise that you see there. Okay, that was fast. So ZBA appeals. Anyone can go online. This is relatively new, I think, within the last 2 years. It's a really great tool. Phila.gov. I'm mixed up here. Okay. So you can go to the appeals, the website listed here, and you can filter under region right here to show council districts, address by council district or planning districts, and then you can click on the appeal number, which appears right here, and here's all the addresses. To find out all kinds of detailed information about that case, like any previous hearings that they've had at ZBA, anything. I mean, it's really an amazing resource. And then the next way you can find ZBA appeals is on the Phila.gov map page. Again, go to the violations map. You'll see lots of different kinds of violations that appear, but that scale of justice right here, that is the symbol for appeals. And again, same thing. If you know where your address is generally, you can see on the map, and then just click on that, and you can see here's a sample of what comes up: the address, the appeal, the grounds for the appeal, when it is, who the applicant is. So lots of information there. So are most people familiar with that resource? Okay, great. Okay, that wraps up my section. And now I think it's going to be really valuable for you to hear. Come on up, Judy. To hear from Judy Walterson, who is from West Palatine and Saunders Park in West Philadelphia, and her experience with being a member of an RCO and appearing before the ZBA. Bring up here. Okay, all right. Judy, thank you. Take it away.
Welcome. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank Donna and Ariel for inviting me to come back again. My hope is that sharing our story from our experience in the 300 block of North 42nd Street, that you might be able to pick up a couple of thoughts or ideas maybe for what's happening in your own neighborhood and for any appearance that you may have to make in front of the ZBA. I'm going to focus a little bit more tonight on our preparation process for a project that was proposed in our community and went before the ZBA for a request in a zoning variance from single-family residential to multifamily residential. So I wanted to give you just a little picture of our block. We're on the 300 block of North 42nd Street. We're between Powelton Avenue and Bering Street, or Market Street and Haverford Avenue. And as you can see, our houses are two-story. They are single-family residential homes. And if you start on the end of our block, that's Miss Barbara's house. She's lived in the neighborhood probably 30-plus years. The next house is actually a rental, but the family that's lived there has lived there for a good 10 or 20 years. Miss Williams in the next house is the eldest resident on our block, our elder, and she has been there for a long time. And the reason why I'm saying that is know your block, know who lives where, know who lives in each house, because people become your resources, or your knowledge of the neighborhood is evidence to present in front of the zoning board. So the particular property in question is 318 North 42nd Street. It's on the left side or the west side of the block down beyond the tree that you see there. And here is the west side of the block. Again, two-story family residence. The property in question is this black iron fence belongs to Lombard Central Presbyterian Church. The property is a vacant lot that's right here between the fence and between the first house here. Historically, there was a two-story property on that block. It fell into disrepair and was eventually knocked down by the city. So the house, it's been an empty lot probably for the past 20 years or so. And you can see parking on our street as well. Full. Okay, so here's a front view of the lot that you're seeing. Now, what has happened, and then to the rear of the lot is Vitus Field, that is Drexel University's athletic fields. So what the developer proposed in 2013 was to build one house in the front, and then to take 12 feet there to the left. There's enough space to put one unit in here, and then to put a driveway that goes back to the rear of the property, and to build, in 2013, he wanted to build 7 units behind the houses that front 42nd Street. So you can imagine why this created a lot of concern in the community, and I'll tell you right up front that there's no one on our block who is supportive of the proposal. We're unanimously, so something that's really nice is to have unanimous objection on our block to this proposal, like, no. And I'm saying in 2013, well, I'm going to do a big spoiler here to my whole presentation because the developer proposed this in 2013. We fought it. We actually won before the zoning board. The variance for the request for multifamily housing, he needed that to build all those units on one piece of property. It was denied. I'm spoiling that for you because the developer came back in January on the night of my CPI graduation to go to a community meeting to essentially propose a similar project. The new proposal has 1 less living unit to the rear, so there's only 6 instead of 7. Okay. But the initial project was driveway back to 3 parking spaces. Now the driveway's back to 6 parking spaces minus the 1 unit. So again, we're still unanimously opposed to that. And I'll give you some reasons for that in just a few minutes. This is the current proposal, the architect's rendering. These are the houses on 42nd Street, fronting 42nd on the west side. This would be the 1 living unit. This would be the driveway back, 6 parking spaces, and the 6 additional units. Now this property is landlocked. The only entrance is the 12-foot wide driveway with an 8-foot mechanical gate closing it in. On this side is Lombard Central Presbyterian Church, pretty much back to the back of the property. This fence line right here, there's no existing fence at the moment because this is just a vacant piece of property at the moment. Everything behind it is Drexel's Vitus Field, which has no public access. What else do I want to point out here? Oh, okay, so the developer purchased 3 empty lots here, 338, 340, 342, and also 318 with the property behind for $148,000 in 2012. Now by right, he could build 3 houses here in these 3 lots, which they were not built before he requested the zoning variance for 318. That was refused. He went ahead and built the 3 houses here. Those houses were sold. Now I asked the developer this in January, or the owner, when he came to our meeting in January. I said, who were those 3 houses sold to? And his response was investors, which I found very interesting because the architect will tell you, oh, these are single-family homes. These are single-family homes. So I would expect an answer such as, a family. Now I'm telling you that because in the meantime, 338, 340, 342 were actually advertised on the internet, and I was smart enough to print that out when I saw it, as single rooms for college students with common living space and again, all zoned single family. Now, you can complain to L&I. The only thing that happened as a result was that those advertisements disappeared off the web. So basically, there's still
the same
students
intention.
live unless L&I cannot enter someone's home if they don't let them in. So people can easily refuse to allow L&I in their home. So it's very hard for L&I to prove any of this. How do you prove that the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 people living in there are unrelated?
Having a camera on the tree.
Well, or a DNA test. Ask them to solve their So you need evidence, hard-based evidence that, all of that. So anyway, We feel like we have a little bit more ammunition this zoning board hearing this time around, though, because of what the developer has done with those 3 properties. We will definitely be using that as evidence at our next zoning board hearing, because those 3 houses have also been a very sore spot for trash on our street. The trash cans are out front, they're always overflowing. The trash is always out on the sidewalk. Again, yes, we do call 311, we do take pictures, we do send them in. The trash is still there. So our thing is, it is creating burden on our community, and we don't want 7 additional units of burden in our neighborhood. Some of the other things are, well, you're telling us that these are single-family homes, but you're asking for a multifamily variance. You're asking for the legal authority, once it's multifamily, that any investor could purchase these units and turn them into apartment buildings because they now have the multifamily variance, which we don't want. We want single families. In fact, the encouraging news is, in the past 2 years, we've had 2 families move into 2 different houses on our block, which has been great. With one family just had a baby, the other family came with a 3-year-old daughter. So we're very happy about that. That's what we want to see in our community. And so these are some of our objections, because this particular lot would remain, our question is, well, that's a private driveway. Who takes care of the trash? Who removes the snow? Who takes care of the landscaping? Oh, well, you need a homeowners association. Help, we don't have a homeowners association on our block. That's destroying the essential character of our neighborhood. We don't have anything like that. And if these are absentee landlords who own, are they going to buy into a homeowners association? Is all that trash going to end up out on the street when the private trash collector doesn't get paid and doesn't come and pick it up? All of these thoughts that we have measure our objections. Now, the architect will tell you these are beautiful single-family townhomes. We have a little bit of space here if anybody wants to do a garden. They're just like the mews that you find in England, and it's like, we're in West Philly, we're not in England. So anyway, but let me move on here. Oh, you did include this, thank you. Okay. Here is the notice of refusal. So the biggest thing is they need to have that multifamily, they need the zoning change to multifamily in order to build more than 1 unit on the property. Now they're saying that their hardship is because the property has about 12,000 square feet. If that property fronted the street, you could build 9 row homes. So we have this piece of property, and we really could build 9 for the amount of space that's available, but we're only building 7, and they haven't necessarily mentioned economic hardship. We'd like to think that there is none, because all 4 properties were purchased for a total of $148,000. Divided by 4 is $37,000 each. If you build 1 house on that property, sell it for $350,000, which is how much the 3 properties down the street were sold for, you can make a nice little tidy profit from that. So, no, we don't really want to hear the economic hardship argument. Off-street parking for multifamily dwelling is prohibited, and then the proposed multiple buildings on the lot, there's the house in the front and then the building in the back is prohibited, but I think what we're sort of focusing on is that zoning change. So, what was our response? Our first indication, and it should say orange, the orange zoning notice, you may know this already, when an orange zoning notice goes up in your neighborhood, pay attention to it, find out everything you can about it, get involved in it, because it said on there how they wanted to build at that time 8 lots total, and we were like, what? Where? And so we began talking. No one was in favor of establishing a new street to the rear of the houses on the west side. So we talk to your neighbors, find out how people feel about these things, because that's how we found out that many people were opposed to this. And I was just telling Ariel that in January, when the developer came back with the similar proposal, we had this neighborhood meeting, and people showed up that hadn't been involved before, including the newest neighbor who just moved in last year, who was already opposed to it. It was like, yes, great, thank you. So it was great to have. It's great to have that support. So this is our zoning map. You see the arrow leading to where the property is. Again, this would be Lombard Central Church here. This is Drexel's Field. So again, you see the landlocked nature of the property. Now, it's my contention that the original lot was this right here with the one house on it. What Drexel did when they sold the property, because they owned it, was added on this to the rear. So we do have a letter to them saying this is what's happening, and people want to know what your response is to this, because these houses would be right along, and their driveway back to the rear parking lot is right to the rear of where the houses are proposed to be built. So we're waiting for a response to see what they will say to that. But you can see the rest of our neighborhood is majority yellow, which is the single family residential. So that is actually a good point to bring out at a zoning board hearing, because they want to know what the rest of the zoning is in the neighborhood. And would this variance be really, a deviation from the norm? And absolutely, yes, it is. It would definitely be something different. And again, another of our concerns is you grant that, then everybody's going to be asking for a multifamily variance, because that would allow them then to legally have apartments in all of the houses around the neighborhood. So, and interestingly enough, our neighborhood was recently remapped, I'll throw that in there too, was recently remapped to really change a lot of the coloring, especially in our neighborhood of West Powelton, back to yellow. A lot of properties were rezoned to become single-family residential because the plan from the Philadelphia City Planning Commission, which was approved by our council person, is encouraging this residential nature. So all of that needs to be brought out at the zoning board hearing when, as neighbors, we give testimony, because that's what the zoning board is listening for. You can go to a zoning board hearing and cry, but that's not going to get you anywhere. I don't want this project on the block. They want to hear about, you about the zoning code, about the zoning in your neighborhood, how this is going to impact it. That's the kind of testimony that they're looking for. Really interesting, in 2013, these are the things that we were told. The developer had retained the very best zoning lawyer in the whole city who always won his cases. We were fighting a no-win battle. You must compromise with the developer, perhaps 5 or 6 units, but you certainly can't ask for just one house to be built on that property. And then the zoning board more often than not approves development plans, even though the zoning code exists for a reason. And when you ask for a variance, you really are asking for, I don't want to say special exception because that's a different category, but you really are asking to be special, with your request. Interestingly enough, we as neighbors won that case, so number 1 ended up not being true. Our request is that one house be built on that property. Sorry, somebody's going to have a really big backyard, or subdivide it, sell it to each neighbor and let them have bigger backyards if you want to make a little money off of it. Do the civic thing and donate it to Lombard Central Church, who already has raised gardening beds in their backyard, and make a bigger community garden. We have suggestions for alternate uses for it. So again, we wanted to stick to that one house to be built. And in our case, they actually said no. Now, we're not taking that no for granted this time around. It's a new zoning board, and perhaps that's why the developer felt comfortable to re-propose the development project. So again, and this time around, we actually hired a lawyer. It was like no holds barred here. And I'm going to shamelessly advertise for him because he's charging a very fair price. One of his little statements is responsible development, so we're very happy with him. His name is Steve Masters. I'll let these lay up here if you're interested, because we've been really encouraged by the work that he has done on our behalf. And he actually taught an RCO training for North of Washington Avenue RCO that myself and our RCO president had gone to, and he was real helpful in his presentation. So, what our local RCO did, they gave us the architect's plan for development. That's where we got that plan from. So your RCO is very helpful because they have this information and can pass it on to you. They recommended and gave us a template for a petition. We went around and got every neighbor to sign a petition that said we object to this. You can definitely submit that at the ZBA hearing. They take hearsay evidence from neighbors as testimony, and so you're allowed to have a petition without proving that each person actually signed it. The RCO president brought out our city planner from the Philadelphia City Planning Commission to see the property, because the Philadelphia planner for our region has a vote at the ZBA hearing, and your city council person has a vote. So you want to make sure you're building relationships with these people, that they come out, representative comes out and sees the property, so that you can, and tell them your objections, so that they're familiar with that. And then it was recommended to us that as many neighbors attend the zoning hearing as possible, that something that the zoning board likes to see is that, yeah, people really are upset about this and people really are objecting to it. Make sure each person who testifies sticks to one or two items and doesn't repeat what someone else says, or they will shut you down. They will say, next person. So make sure you're only repeating your objections one time each. So what we did was actually met together, decided who would testify to what, and had our whole objections lined up before we went, which we're doing tomorrow night for our zoning hearing next Wednesday. So use your neighborhood resources. The nearest neighbor to the property is an engineer, so he's able to give insight on infrastructural limitations, street design, other environmental impacts. Ms. Dolores, like I said, has lived on the block all her life. She could testify to the one house that was there previously with no driveway. I have a lot of experience with immigration, so you need evidence-based testimony. Address the points in the zoning code. Stick to what they're looking for. It's not going to result in unnecessary hardship. It will increase congestion and the danger of fire. No emergency services can get back there. They can wheel a stretcher back there. The fire department can put a hose back there. There can be sprinklers in that building, but why would you build new construction excuse me, that emergency services cannot reach? The police can't see what's going on behind there. Use variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. You paint the picture of your community, so it's important to take pictures and show pictures and talk about what the essential character is of your neighborhood. For our block, it's families and the family orientation. And so we want to do everything possible to paint that picture. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. What's required? Lots of meetings. You meet with the developer. We met with our RCO. We met as among neighbors as ourselves. Tomorrow night's meeting is at my house for anybody who wants to testify at the zoning hearing, so we can get our testimony together. For any of these meetings, whether the developer sends a letter or not, we hand out flyers saying, hey, here's the official RCO meeting. Astro Bright paperwork so we get people's attention. Okay, and I think I talked about some of the other points there. Just remember, talk to your neighbors, because everybody provides a piece of the puzzle. This time around, one of the new neighbors who came out for the most recent proposal is a professional photographer. Oh, fantastic. Let's get Drexel's permission to go to the rear of that property and take a bunch of pictures, which we did, which will be used at the zoning board hearing. Pack out the zoning hearing, provide some evidence, paint an accurate picture. The only picture the developer showed at the previous hearing was a picture of weeds. gave no perspective of what the plot looked like at all in relation to the street or any of the other buildings around it. And I always say, don't settle. Excuse me. We could have really been discouraged at the beginning and said, well, why bother? Good lawyer, zoning board always says yes. Why should we even bother doing all of this work? There is hope because we won. But we do ask for your good thoughts and prayers for next Wednesday, 1 o'clock, right around the corner on this floor. We have a zoning hearing. And I actually invite you to come out. If you want to see testimony in action, please come. And especially if you thought the proposal was a little much and like to support our single family, come on out. Okay. I just wanted to mention real quick the handout. On the other, sort of on the back side of my PowerPoint presentation. Is it in the packet?
Yeah,
It
it's
looks
in the
like this. It
packet.
has 3 columns.
It's got in your letter templates on the back.
Yes. On the front, actually Steve Masters, our lawyer, who was doing his RCO presentation, handed this out at that RCO training. This is the checklist the zoning board uses. Each zoning board member has this checklist in front of them at the hearing, and they're ticking off what points you're making. So this is what you want to use to base your testimony on. Ours is a use variance from multifamily, from single family to multifamily. So we are addressing these particular points. Yes, it alters the essential character of our neighborhood. Yes, it increases danger. Yes, it affects the implementation of the 2035 plan. So that's what we're aiming for, to address these points. And then on the back is an email that we just sent out to all our RCO members and to all the neighbors who cannot make the meeting. They can send a letter or an email to the zoning board, and that will also be entered into testimony. So make sure, if you want to send an email, feel free. What I did was made sure that people had a template of exactly what to send. People need information. They just don't, you know, like, sure, I'd love to write a letter to the zoning board. I have no idea who to send it to or what to say. Here's the information that they need.
Great.
So,
Thank you,
Yeah.
Judy.
sorry about that.
Any other questions for Judy or about our field?
Yes.
Yeah, Brian?
I'm just curious, you guys are right by University City 2.0 and 3.0.
Yeah, the immigration building, that's what we
Right,
call it.
So how do you handle projects that are for the community, that you're positive for? I mean, you gave us an example of a project that you're fighting against.
You know what's really interesting, in our neighborhood is so hot for college student housing that we're pretty much objecting to everything, because we have developers coming in just wanting to build as big as they can, as wide as they can, and put as many college students into every building as they can. So it feels like we're always objecting to the variances being requested. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know that I even have an example of positive.
Sometimes the things that the developers are bringing to the community are beneficial for the community.
Yeah, I have no doubt that there are examples of that. We have not found that to be true in recent years in our community. It's usually bigger. And the experience has been, when you build a house like 338, 340, and 342, that's how it gets used. And it's become a burden on the community more than anything.
I know this was kind of a special case, but you did work extensively with the developer on the University City High School site. So that might be one example where you kind
That's
of...
true. Our RCO, yes. University City High School land was purchased by Drexel University, and so representatives of the RCO, of like all the local community organizations, were able to be advisors on that project and give a lot of input into building sizes, building uses, landscaping. Thank you.
Reinstating the street grid too, which is cool.
Yes, 37th Street from Market up to, I think, Lancaster Avenue. So yeah, there are, I forgot about that. I'm so, it's like I can only think about mental health.
Are you organized as an RCO underneath the umbrella of the larger RCO as your neighborhood block, or are you just organized as a neighborhood block, or?
No, our block, we don't have any official designation. We just call ourselves the lawyer actually started calling us the 42nd Street neighbors because we don't really have, we were just a group of people who heard about this project coming up on our block and we were saying, no, this is not a reflection of who we are as a community. And so I also encourage people, you know, we have proposals that come before our RCO, and my first question is, where are the people from that block? You know, where are they? Are they upset? You know, my vote actually, when I'm at an official meeting where I can actually vote on a property, I want to know how the neighbors on that block feel about it. If they're okay with it, you know, then fine, you know, I'll actually vote with the neighbors because, you know, they need to know what they want on their particular block. And I just thought of actually another example where we did encourage, there was like a tiny warehouse space where a coffee roaster was requesting to store like supplies and trucks and stuff, and it was a small business, environmentally friendly, all different things like that, and we, you know, that was approved because we thought it was a good use for the property that they were requesting, because I don't know that a business was allowed to be there, but that's what they were requesting. So, yeah, we actually don't approve everything. It feels like it.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I may, you talked about the not having a homeowners association. So can I ask how you guys paying for the attorney?
Oh, just myself and another neighbor said we're
Okay.
willing to invest in this, and he's actually very reasonable.
What is
So we
reasonable
just-
for you?
$1,000 that we could split in half,
Right.
and then anybody else who wanted to contribute to that can just simply write us a check, and we'll show them the receipt for the money that we paid.
So why not a homeowners association? Because you talked about those things to clean up and keep it
For
going.
that
And especially when you
property,
have seniors that may not be able to shovel snow and get up in the street for, in the neighborhood.
for the neighborhood itself,
Yes, for the neighborhood.
a homeowners association is a little bit different. It's what a condominium complex would have, where you actually have to buy into it and pay a fee.
Right.
And you would have to, I think it would actually have to be a part of your deed. See, another question we have about this property, if it's one piece of land and you're saying single families are going to buy each unit, do they own just the house or do they own the land underneath it? Who pays the taxes? See, all of these raise a whole bunch of complicated questions. And because of our experience with the other 3 houses that the developer built, we're saying that a homeowners association works when you sell 7 units to families.
Right.
And the families are willing to buy into it. When you're selling properties to investors who are absentee landlords, and we have, you know, the tax records that their tax bills are being sent to places out in the suburbs, their LLCs, that's other evidence, you can present it at the zoning board. We're very skeptical of having a homeowners association back there. We just feel like it's not going to work. I
No,
mean,
I don't-
it's
I don't-
interesting, we don't have a formal one on our block, and we actually
Right,
act
that's
like
what I'm
one.
saying. Right, that's
you
my
know?
point. Because I understand, but when, every time you talk about a new family moving in, you
Mm-hmm.
can present it to them going forward, and the current residents can obviously choose to or not.
Yeah.
Because that's something we're considering to maintain, because now we do have a community that's 60, 70 years old. A lot of seniors who
Right.
can't cut grass,
That's
can't
a
do
good
that.
point.
And so
That's a
we're
good
trying to
point.
get that started, the civic organization is trying to get that started, just
One-
for those purposes, or that money could be used in the case where you need that attorney.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point, thank you.
Yeah, like 5
Something
hours a
else
month,
about
5
this
hours.
particular property is the developer's selling them for $300,000 to $350,000. Families are not purchasing houses for that amount in our neighborhood. That's why they're being bought by investors. There's a lot of economics behind
Oh, yeah.
all of
They can put a lot
this. So let me
students
throw
in
that out there too.
Dana and Peggy?
So looking to the future, I saw that on the zoning map, the property that's owned by Drexel currently and is used as their activities fields, is zoned, I think it was CMX4. So that's a pretty dense zoning. How are you guys going to handle that if it comes up as to be built as multi-residential? Have you looked at that at all? Sorry.
We're a little immediately more concerned about Lombard Central.
Okay.
Because that church has been very small over the years, and we're very afraid of that property being sold and just a huge dormitory being built there. So we're actually inviting and then the most recent pastor was reassigned, and now they just have pulpit supply. So we've actually asked a representative from the Presbytery to come to our next neighborhood meeting. What can we do? Because we're afraid, you know.
Lombard Central is historically.
But it is historically designated, so we're like, whew, you know, at least they can't knock it down without, you know, us being able to fight. Drexel's field, I imagine, is going to stay Drexel's field only because they have no other place to go and play lacrosse and soccer and all of that. So they haven't been too much of a concern for the community. We think it will always remain. I mean, where else are they going to play their games, basically?
Peggy?
This is a very touchy question, but it was brought up about the $350,000 homes. This is the other end of that. I went with a friend to attend a zoning meeting at a different SEO than mine, and I mean, every neighborhood has its personality.
Right.
So a couple of three came up, and they were going to be, and I'm thinking about Ken Weinstein, is that who we had last week? Who mostly just rents out his stuff. Now, granted, it's restaurants and commercial, but in the beginning, he was renting out residential. If neighborhoods get so wrought up about people who are renting are not invested in the neighborhood in the same way that homeowners are, which there's pros and cons to that argument, because when homeowners fall down in their home economics, they have just as much of a struggle and bring the neighborhood down just as much as renters do, and they're not going anywhere. So in the interest of the city trying to meet that every year worsening situation for middle and low income people, not homeowners. I don't know if anyone has a notion about how to, because going back to that meeting, they had 3 coming up, and 2 of them were not going to be sold, they were going to be rented out. And there was no discussion, they just refused. It's like they had already a carte blanche understanding on that particular zoning review board. I think my zoning review board would be like thrilled if anybody would rent, you know, because it would that would give more stability to our neighborhood.
Okay, well, and we do have renters on our block, which, you know, we're definitely going to point out at the zoning board, but they're families. See, the difference is, are you using that building as 5 individual rooms with locks on the doors and then a common living room, kitchen, shared by college students, basically, who have no investment in the community.
The code specifies that 3 or more are unrelated, right?
But how do you prove it? We can complain. See, the
That's why this
difficulty
is
has been, we can complain, but either LNI staff is short, or if they knock on the door and the people don't leave them in, there's not much that they can do to enforce it. That's the unfortunate. The law exists, but, you know, the enforcement is weak.
Maybe you have to go out and find your families and invite them to your block to rent.
All right, any final questions, please write them on your evaluation form. I know Judy will do her best to get answers back to everybody. So it's time for our group exercise again. This is a really good one. Andy's going to come up here and explain it, and if we can get a couple people to help Ariel clear off space on your tables. It's a relatively small map this time, and you'll be getting some dots. Set of dots. You're going to explain the legend.
I can explain it. So what we have here, each table is going to get a map, and this is an oblique aerial view of a place in Philadelphia. And there's a little information on each map, so you have something to go by. But what you'll see here on this map, there are a number of blocks that are outlined in a thick black line. And for each of those block areas that's outlined, you have stickers. And what we'd like you to do is you're going to work like you are starting from scratch and you're zoning a small area. And so what we'd like you to do is place a sticker onto each of those blocks with the zoning that you would that you recommend happening in that spot, and use what you see on the map to sort of help you understand what you think should go there. So for example, in the middle of the map in highlighted in blue, there's a train station. So you might want to think about what kind of use is best used around a train station. You'll notice there are plenty of blocks that just look like they're single family. There's a couple of blocks that are vacant. You can definitely see some vacant, so that's where you have the ability to really start from scratch. There are some other blocks that look like they're, like as we mentioned, there's a main street. And that main street is like the commercial corridor, so think of that as well. What would you put on a main street? So you have a mix of different stickers to use. One is red. Red would be CMX, so that's your commercial mixed use district. One is orange, that's multifamily or residential multi. One is yellow, that's your single family district. And the other is like a dark black or gray, that's brown. That's IRMX, that would be industrial residential mixed use. So place on your map each a sticker for every area outlined in black, and we'll be around to help you out if you have any questions, and then afterwards we'll show you what this actually is zoned, and we can sort of see how you would do it if you had a blank slate versus how it actually is zoned currently, and whether it does need to have maybe some zoning changes.
And we've given you a certain number of stickers for each base district. You don't have to use them all, but put 2 for higher density. So if you think CMX should be a high density, use 2 of those red stickers in that black square.
Over here too, right?
One is like
Definitely on this street.
Right. Yes.
It could be medium density.
Well, it can go all the way up to, 4 or 5 are city, but, community commercial mixed use is for,
An institution.
yeah, 2.5.
No, 2.5 is what.
Right, but I think
Yeah.
3 is kind of tough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we're only going in the black line throughout the whole thing.
You're right, exactly. Right,
Ideally, I mean, we would make this commercial.
Offices or something.
But this might be a good spot for a house.
How far away?
Right, it could be like
That people that
I just like sticky to stickers.
But you want to see your closest rate is
Well, that's why we need
the high rises. So it can, I mean, it can be whatever.
or it's probably so that you access like I would set it out and try to make sure you guys have stuff on access. So this like I did not live in your apartment. I trained, but I yeah, I would make these both right across the street. Whatever this is, it's a compliment. It's yeah, it's now what kind of is a residential right back to it's just other houses
Yeah, I would do the periphery neighborhood.
but then I would make it so I'm not going to could be.
I'm gonna reveal later.
You want to put this down?
So this is a private investor, so we are private, so we have $2.8
Because it's kind of like
we have a money here.
Yeah, this is, it's like they're rethinking the way this goes, and I'm showing you how it really is. You can sort of see how that's different.
so but you can have housing.
No, we
Now,
can't.
you put sort of what you think should be there, and like you might look at these and say, yeah, this is probably the.
And then I would make, if this is going to be industrial residential, then I would make this no, residential only. Because that doesn't speak well to res single.
This is kind of, it's a little,
And then this single,
and that's the idea, so you kind of capture we're doing a remapping. In some ways, you're doing what is on the ground, because you don't think it's going to change.
it'd be nice if all of this that was
Like,
what's going to
I
bring
need to
us
change
all
this,
together.
to make it so we have a chance to start over, you know, things like that.
All the
That's the wine world. That's what I
So I feel like we have commercial, industrial, and then like all industrial. I think I wanted to do yeah, the same with the last I'm just joking. That's on the grid, that is all yeah. I don't know how I feel about so you want to write and bake that.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Cut off here, but then you have this.
Right, they could, if they wanted to, right?
This would also be
Our schools, we have to think about what we're giving for. Yeah, they are.
I don't know, I mean,
Especially like for profit.
I guess I would like to try. I don't think now.
that's like they would take warehouse.
Bottom, keeping the commercial, top I don't think we sell the parts.
I talked to
Wrap it up, another minute.
I used to write up.
All right, everybody, we're going to pull it back together. Not yet, not yet. All right, thanks everybody for working on this exercise. We are going to ask for a volunteer to sort of show what you guys worked on and what you were thinking. Everybody want to? Yeah, we got one right here. We have a wireless mic. We want to use it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you could just sort of, yeah.
Give me the mic.
Go to the front, that way we can see.
All right,
Because if not, my neck is gonna be like, sorry.
Okay, so this is our map. What do we name our RCL, guys? We don't have one. Okay. So anyway, we have a train. It's okay. I'll give the mic back. I promise. But anyway, so we have a train station down here, which you see in blue, and we decided to make it commercial. So that's what all the red is around this general direction. We figured it'd be kind of like a centralized area for people to like get food and get all kinds of stuff and shops, and we figured it just made sense that around there's a lot of foot traffic, people will be able to buy stuff. And then of course as you go out some more, we kind of move more residential. So we see some residential areas here. And then as you branch out even further, there's some light residential, so single family houses on the outside. So you kind of see there's a bit of a pattern here. There's some density in the middle, and then as you go out, it becomes more residential. Then of course, we put a little industry up top here because it was kind of like out of the way. It wasn't close to any houses, so people can't complain there's like smog when they wake up. but yeah, so I feel pretty good about this. I think it does too.
Anybody else?
You wanna talk?
Anybody else? Want to share? Nobody wants to share.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna share? All right.
You gotta hold the mic up.
I got hold of the mic? Okay. Oh, gotcha. You hold that, I'll hold the mic.
All right. So ours, we were thinking of this more as like, this is our main street and our train station, so we wanted to have a lot of commercial and there we go. So we have our, I can't point now though. So we have our train station and our main street, but we wanted to have a lot of commercial to support our main street and the train station with high density housing, with the residential multi, again, to support those commercial corridors and also have close access to the train station. We have our ICMX up here to be complementary to each other, and then our residential single family on the periphery. Yeah.
Excellent, yeah. Very good, thank you. Does anybody want to guess where this is? Anybody got a guess?
Stadium Market?
No?
Okay. No.
Yeah, we guessed it was Germantown and the main street was Shelton Avenue. No.
Very good, this is Germantown.
Wow.
Yes, Germantown Station on the just the east line of Shelton Avenue, or Shelton Avenue, sorry. And this is what is at this, the area is actually zoned. So what you'll see here, and a lot of you, walking around, you guys kind of all did a very similar thing, which I think makes a lot of sense. And that is putting, a lot of the density around the train station, around the main streets. But what you'll notice is that there's just kind of it looks a little mixed here. There's single family that goes all the way up to Shelton Ave, which is a major commercial corridor in the area. There is CA1, which is an auto-oriented commercial, not the type of thing you would want to see around a train station. There is a lot of mix of different things, and there's not a lot of multifamily. Pretty much the only spot is right there. So I think you guys and all of us would do a better job than what we currently have. So
Remapping is in order.
Let's remap it.
yeah, we remap.
Right? Next.
Yeah.
Is there different zoning opportunities around train stations?
Generally, usually train stations can help support higher density because, this specific train station and most of them you have a one-seat ride downtown. And so you have an ability to support a higher density. People would like to live near a train station so they can do that. But it also supports the commercial. There might be need for coffee, laundry services, things like that you might get while you're on your way to the train station. So it's usually a good way to support, higher density development. In other places in the city where we're on a sort of a high speed, high frequency, more affordable form of transit, like if you're at Broad Erie or Broad Albany or something like that, you can get downtown so quickly that it really spurs huge amounts of development. Regional rail lines are pretty good. They're just, it's $4.50 a trip if you buy your ticket ahead of time, and so it's a little different than $1.80 or whatever.
Oh, with the keys and the...
Oh, the key, yeah, I'm not on that one. But we're working on transit-oriented development legislation too to help create more density around train stations.
Okay, I hope we didn't blow your mind too much. That was very fast on zoning. If you want to learn more about the zoning variance process and more things about RCOs, we are going to have training for RCO people May 31st and June 5th in this room. So if you're a member of an RCO, you should be getting notification about that.
Did you send it to us, or we?
Yeah, I can send it to everybody by email also. And there's yet one more quiz that we didn't do in class, so I'll assign that as homework. This is multiple guess, so it's easy. It's the last handout, I think, before your evaluation form, so again, it's gonna take you a minute to do this. This is like your house. Send you the answer to that next week. So please do fill out the evaluation form. You guys, this is the last class you're all gonna be together. Okay, next week is the first elective class. You're going to have probably about 20 graduates join you. And some of you have elected not to take the first elective class. So that's why I handed out the contact list so you have each other's email and you can contact each other. But it'll be a different class next week. And that is going to be a really great class on community organizing. I'm really excited about that one. I think we have 50 people signed up. So we're going to be setting up the room a little bit differently, but we'll see you next Wednesday if you sign up for that.
So we need to sign up for that for next
No,
week?
you already paid for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I know, I paid the whole class, the whole course, so I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I just submit the